From the very best team in Major League Baseball to the very worst, every single squad has one guy who represents the overall team better than any. Now, before we get started, I do want to say that this isn't meant to be taken as the best player on any given team. There are certain guys that have been with the squad for a long enough amount of time or have represented something since they made their debut that has managed to garner them this elevated status. As such, it's not exclusively on the criteria of skill you have to judge them by, but also factors like recognizability, leadership skills, and consistency. With all that being said, let's jump right into it. Naming the face of the franchise for every MLB team. Today, going in alphabetical order, starting with the Angels. While I will admit that Mike Trout missing as much time as he has over the last few years has certainly done damage to his overall stature as the face of the Angels, you still can't argue the fact that he's still their guy, the beating heart and soul of their team, and it's not like he's gotten bad over this period either. In those 111 games he's managed to play since the beginning of 2023, he's still managed to hit 28 home runs with an OPS plus north of 135 and a full season WAR pace of around 6. If he can possibly manage to play 120 plus games this year, he could do wonders to restoring his image league-wide, but if he's unable to, it is possible we start seeing guys like Logan O'Hoppe or Zach Neto begin to chip away at this designation, even if Neto is going to miss some time to start the year with an injury. The Astros are up next with another obvious veteran choice, as though you can argue that Yordan Alvarez has been the most consistently productive Astro over the last few years, especially at the plate. How could you really argue against a guy who's now spent 14 years with the squad, during which he's set many club records and also been a part of multiple World Series winning teams? That's right, even as he shuffles around positions for the upcoming season, Jose Altuve is still very much the face of the Stros, and even though he did post his worst OPS in a full season since 2013 last year, he still managed to register a healthy 126 OPS plus and 3.4 WAR, meaning there's almost certainly something still left in the tank for the tiny Titan. The Sacramento, Las Vegas, Oakland A's are certainly an interesting case, as though they've become one of the more exciting teams in baseball due to their bevy of young offensive talent. Their clear choice here for the face of their franchise is a 30-year-old D8 who didn't play meaningful games at the big league level until his age 29 season, in Brent Rooker. Even the A's absolute buffoon of an owner recognized this when he gave the righty a 5-year, $60 million extension over this offseason. What did he do to earn this? How about posting a slash line of 293, 365, 562, with 39 home runs, 112 RBI, 5.6 WAR, and a top 10 MVP finish in 2024? If Sacramento, that just feels wrong to say, wants to have any chance at a wildcard spot this season, they're going to need Brent to keep raking like he did last year, or at least at the same level he did the prior season, when he still posted an impressive 817 OPS with 30 home runs and a 127 OPS plus. Toronto is yet another case of a slam dunk choice, as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. managed to post one of the better hitting seasons in baseball last year with a 6.2 WAR, 30 home runs, 940 OPS, and 166 OPS plus, all helping to raise his stature back to the levels it was when he finished second in MVP voting in 2021 as a 22-year-old. This was a much-needed development in a career that seemed to be on the downswing, as Vladdy Jr. had posted back-to-back seasons with an OPS hovering around 800, a mark that certainly isn't terrible, but wasn't anywhere near to where people thought he could be, especially with his ridiculously good batted ball data. But with this behind him, Guerrero seems poised for yet another productive season, even if it remains to be seen if the Blue Jays will be able to be competitive around him. The Braves are in a similar situation to the Angels, in that they have a clear superstar that has become about as synonymous with Atlanta as any player in their recent history, but unfortunately has dealt with some pretty extreme injuries over the last few years, in Ronald Acuña Jr. When Acuña is healthy like he was in 2023, we saw what he could do, winning the NL MVP while leading the league in runs, hits, stolen bases, on-base percentage, OPS, and OPS plus. The only issue is that in 2 of his last 4 seasons, he's missed significant time with ACL injuries to different knees, and it wasn't like 2024 was off to an amazing start for him anyway, as he was sporting just a 716 OPS through 49 games with exactly 0 WAR when he got hurt. He'll need to prove that this was an aberration while also demonstrating that he can still run at the same level that he was pre-surgery. But knowing his talent level, it's totally possible he does all of this and more in the upcoming season. We move away from a recent run of young superstars and back to a veteran, as even though I do believe that Jackson Chourio will take the spot before long and that William Contreras is one of the best catchers in the game, it's clear to me right now that the face of this team is still the player sporting its largest contract in franchise history, in Christian Yelich. And don't overlook what he was able to accomplish in 2024 either, as last year was a real renaissance for the lefty, as he put up his best batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS, and OPS plus since his second place finish for NL MVP back in 2019. The only issue is that he only managed to play 73 games, but his quality of contact numbers look strong and he hasn't had any real issues with staying healthy for the preceding couple seasons, so I do think he's poised for another good year in 2025, even if by the end of the season he may no longer be holding this spot through no real fault of his own. We now come across our most depressing situation of the video so far in the St. Louis Cardinals, as they arguably just lost one of their major candidates for the spot in Paul Goldschmidt to the Yankees in free agency. Not that he really did himself any favors with his showing last year, and the only other player still on the squad with multiple years of success and stature is Nolan Arenado, and apparently they're actively looking to trade him at this point. But I guess since they haven't pulled the trigger, he becomes the de facto guy. So let's go ahead and talk about what was a pretty tough season for Arenado overall in 2024, when he posted career full season lows in home runs, doubles, slugging percentage, OPS, and OPS+. While his glove is still really good, and he's a decent bet for 20 home runs if he can make a small bounce back, it's certainly up in the air if he'll even begin the year in St. Louis. The Cubs are the first team we're going to look at that's face of the franchise actually hasn't played even a single regular season game with the squad so far. In offseason acquisition, Kyle Tucker. While you could certainly debate the legitimacy of designating a guy who's in his first season with the team as the face of the franchise, keep in mind that this is the precise reason they acquired him, to be that guy. And last year, in somewhat limited time, he certainly played like one, crushing 23 home runs in just 78 games with 11 stolen bases, a 289, 408, 585 slash line, and a ridiculous wins above replacement pace of 9.5 for a full season. If he can translate even 75% of that to his play in 2025, it seems highly likely that Chicago could find themselves back in the postseason for the first time since 2020. There's two major candidates for the D-backs to discuss really, in superstar second baseman Ketel Marte and electric outfielder Corbin Carroll. Now, while I don't want to give too much weight to a sophomore slump that featured a very strong second half from Carroll, I do think I'm going to have to go with Marte anyway, as he's actually been contributing in the desert since 2017, with his last two seasons being truly exceptional. As 2024 saw him post career highs in home runs, RBI, OPS+, and fall just short of doing so in WAR, despite missing over 25 games due to injuries. He even earned a third-place MVP finish and a Silver Slugger over the offseason. While I do think this will be a closer race going forward, especially if Corbin can get back to his power-hitting ways he displayed in his rookie season, I am confident that Ketel belongs here for now. It's almost not even worth spending too much time on the Dodgers, who, despite running out what might be the largest collection of Hall of Fame talent in the game today, along with countless All-Stars, have seen all of them pale in comparison to who might be the most popular player in the history of the sport, as well as one of the greatest in Shohei Ohtani. The Japanese unicorn took a year off pitching last year to recover from his Tommy John surgery, and in the meantime happened to become the first player ever to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in a season, while also leading the league in on-base percentage, RBI, slugging percentage, OPS, OPS+, and those aforementioned home runs. Oh yeah, did I mention he actually ended up being the first DH ever to win MVP as well? With him set to get back on the mound in 2025, his status as face of the franchise in LA should only get cemented further, though it is an open question as to what kind of production he'll be able to throw up from this position after his second career major elbow surgery. Since Buster Posey retired at the end of 2021, the Giants have been searching for their next true face of their franchise, a guy who could perform at a star level year in and year out. And it seems they finally found him last season in Gold Glove third baseman Matt Chapman, who managed to post his highest WAR since 2019. At an impressive mark of 7.1, to go along with an 11th place MVP finish, 27 home runs, 39 doubles, and an impressive 125 OPS+. San Fran very intelligently signed the righty to a 6-year, $151 million extension midway through the season, a deal that should keep him in the Bay for the foreseeable future. It will be interesting to see if their front office can build a winning team around him, especially in a hyper-competitive division that might boast the most raw talent of any in the major leagues. We have back-to-back third baseman now with Jose Ramirez of the Guardians, a guy who's managed to be arguably the most consistent player in Major League Baseball since his breakout way back in 2016, after which point he's managed to crush over 250 home runs, steal over 230 bases, and average about 6 WAR a season. There's simply no aspect of his game that's a real weakness, and he might even be at the height of his powers as of now, as he's coming off a career-high 41 steals, career-high tying 39 home runs, and a top 5 MVP finish. The Mariners are a rare case of a team with the face of their franchise not being their best player from the previous season, nor a veteran who's been on the squad for more than half a decade. Yet, it'd be really hard to argue the selection here should be anybody but Julio Rodriguez. The center fielder has been experiencing a pretty stark regression since his rookie year, seeing his WAR drop at a pace of about 1 a season and his OPS+ diminish by 15 points a campaign. Add in the fact he posted career lows in runs, doubles, home runs, stolen bases, walks, batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, and OPS last year, and you get a pretty concerning trend. With all that being said, the talent is certainly still there, and you simply can't discount what he's meant to the city of Seattle since he made his debut in 2022, emerging as the first real national superstar for the team since the days of Ichiro Suzuki and Felix Hernandez. The Marlins on the surface might seem like a team that's difficult to choose from, as they are chock full of young players with very little big league experience, and with basically none of them having major success being tallied in Miami for even a few years. That is, besides one guy. Someone who will more than likely be dangled as major trade bait at the deadline, Sandy Alcantara. While the massive righty missed all of 2024 due to injury, he still easily takes a spot, as just 2 short years ago he was leading all major league pitchers in WAR, complete games, and innings pitched, winning a Cy Young in the process. Sure, his 2023 was subpar, but being as how his stuff looks just as good as it ever did in the early days of spring training, I do think we'll see a major return to form in 2025. Keep an eye out for Yuri Perez as well, who himself is coming off of a major injury, but might be poised to take this spot if Sandy ends up being dealt at the deadline. The Mets right now are certainly one of the hardest teams you could examine in an exercise like this. Do you pick the guy in Francisco Lindor who's improved in every tangible statistical way for the last 3 years running now and who's coming off his best season in New York that featured a runner-up MVP finish, or the guy with the largest contract in the history of Major League Baseball with the resume to back it up? Albeit with none of that coming as a Met as of now. While I certainly wouldn't fault you for picking Frankie, I do think I'm going to have to go with Soto here. Honestly, do you think he'd get paid $50 million a year for a decade and a half if he wasn't going to be the face of their franchise? In fact, it's downright expected of him at that price point. And being as how he has some of the best numbers ever posted by a player before his age 26 season, including a .953 career OPS and an average of 6.3 WAR and 35 home runs per 162 games, I do think he'll manage to live up to his billing, at least for the next few years. The Nationals might have the slimmest pickings of anybody so far. They actually don't have a legitimate choice here who's played even 3 full seasons with the team, as all of their frontline candidates in CJ Abrams, James Wood, Dylan Cruz, or Mackenzie Gore are all under 27 years old. Of these options, I think Abrams most closely resembles the label of face of the franchise, as he's managed to be among the team leaders in stolen bases, home runs, RBI, doubles, and triples over the last couple seasons. But this probably says more about their lack of depth in this respect than the exceptional play of CJ, who's paired that impressive offensive profile with one of the worst defensive performances in baseball over that same time period. I think in the next 3 years we'll have a much clearer idea of who this should be, with my money personally being on the giant light tower power possessing Wood. Baltimore is up next with one of the best young shortstops in the history of Major League Baseball, with Gunnar Henderson managing to put up 16.2 WAR, 69 home runs, a 141 OPS plus, and 2 top 10 MVP finishes before he even turned 24, with him last season only being kept from being top 3 in the MVP race by the ridiculous efforts of Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, and Bobby Witt Jr. Why? Because he hit 37 home runs with an 893 OPS and 159 OPS plus while stealing 21 bases, and being one of the most productive overall base runners in the sport in advanced numbers as well. His fielding isn't a massive boon to his game right now, but it really doesn't have to be in order for him to be one of the most valuable players in the game, and easily the face of Baltimore's young core for years to come. On to the Padres now. We have a similar situation in a funny way as the Brewers, as even though Fernando Tatis Jr. has way more upside than Christian Yelich at this point, he has been on somewhat of a career downswing since a highlight-filled 2021, where he finished third in MVP voting and led the league with 42 home runs, as he followed this up with a PED suspension and some reckless injuries in 2022, wiping out the entire season, and since, he's never been quite the same player. But this isn't to say he hasn't still been very good. He won a Platinum Glove in 2023 and posted a season with a 130 OPS plus in 2024, indicating he still has that MVP potential that he displayed in the early years of his career. Where the situation gets much more like the Brewers is the fact that the Padres have a young upstart themselves who could take this role in the coming seasons if Tatis can't get things back on track, and Rookie of the Year runner-up Jackson Merrill, who managed to post nearly 4.5 WAR in his first season in the big leagues at just 20 years old, along with a host of other impressive offensive and defensive numbers. The Phillies have quite a few major superstars, and as such, you'd assume this would be a tough decision, but when it's all said and done, it's really not, being the generationally great Bryce Harper, who, since he arrived in Philadelphia back in 2019, has been nothing short of downright elite, winning an MVP back in 2021 while finishing top 15 in voting 2 other times, including last year when he finished 6th. I know a lot of people believe his prime was in Washington, and while he may have had his best year ever there in 2015, he's arguably been better in Philadelphia, with ridiculous 285, 391, 533 slash line to go along with the 149 OPS plus and over 30 home runs per 162 games. Sure, he's missed some time with injuries here and there, but when you combine what he's managed to do in the regular season with his playoff performances, which include multiple clutch moments as well as overall brilliant numbers, you get what amounts to one of the easiest choices of this entire video. Here come the Pirates with another easy choice in big righty Paul Skeens, who might have had the best 133 inning start to a career we've ever seen, finishing third in Cy Young and top 20 in MVP voting, while running away with Rookie of the Year, toting gaudy numbers that included 170 strikeouts, a 0.95 whip, and a 1.96 ERA. His 2.14 ERA plus would have easily led the entire major leagues had he managed to pitch the required 162 innings, which says a lot considering that each league had a triple crown winner last year. The only question right now in Pittsburgh in regards to Skeens being the face of the franchise will be if he can manage to challenge for this crown himself in the upcoming season. The Rangers have a bevy of young talent at their disposal currently, as well as one of the most dominant starting pitchers in Major League history while he's healthy, but the face of their franchise comes from neither one of these, instead being one of the most consistently dominant shortstops of his generation, Corey Seager. While he's missed about 40 games in the last 2 seasons, he's also managed to finish top 15 in MVP voting in both of these campaigns, with a combined OPS of over 900 and 63 home runs between them. When he's on the field, he's easily one of the best players in the sport, including with the glove, which is something I feel he gets a bit underrated on. And it doesn't seem like any of his skills are withering with age yet either, meaning I believe he has a decent chance to hold on to this title for at least a couple more seasons. The Rays easily have the player with the least big league experience we're going to talk about today, in righty Junior Caminero, who had a pretty decent rookie season last year at just 20 years old, posting a 724 OPS with an above average 105 OPS plus. Now, you could argue this is Shane McClanahan's spot with his superstar performances in recent years, or even Brandon Lowe's, who's been with the team since 2018. But I'm going to make the case that Junior should be in this spot because of one major thing. He's Tampa's most recognizable and projectable player since Wander Franco, and offers them their best chance at a future MVP contender currently on the team. Meanwhile, McClanahan hasn't thrown over 120 innings in a season since 2022, and Lowe has only had 1 season in his career with over 3 wins above replacement. Caminero might be the game's best pure hitting prospect since Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and this certainly will make him a focal point in Rays baseball for the foreseeable future. Cincinnati is another team with a young, dynamic superstar who easily takes the cake here. In 6'5" shortstop Elly De La Cruz, who in his sophomore season led all of the major leagues in stolen bases at 67, crushed 25 home runs, knocked 10 triples, threw up an 809 OPS, and finished 8th in MVP voting. Yeah, his strikeouts were a little out of control at a league-leading total of 218, but if he can keep managing to walk at an above-average rate, while cutting down on his swing and miss a little bit, he should be able to continue to put up superstar production. And who knows, if he really starts to tap into his light tower power potential, we could see a 40-40, maybe even 50-50 season over the next half-decade. The Red Sox just signed a $40 million a year free agent in Alex Bregman, and were led in most valuing metrics last year by Jarren Duran. However, there's no way at this point we can give this to anybody but Rafael Devers, who's arguably been the face of this franchise now since his breakout 2019 season, as since that campaign he's managed to post at least a 126 OPS plus, 27 home runs, and 3.5 WAR in every single year besides the COVID-shortened 2020. This isn't to say, however, that this is going to be his without challenge, as both of the guys I just mentioned could be in contention for this spot in the near future, especially if Devers continues to put his own self-interests ahead of the team's success, like he's done in spring training this year by refusing to move off of third base for Gold Glover Bregman. The Rockies just lost their guy who would have taken this spot to retirement over this offseason, an outfielder Charlie Blackmon, so we're going to be forced to pick a new player here as a result. This leaves 2 quality options in elite fielders Brenton Doyle and Ezequiel Tovar. I think I'll choose Doyle here, considering that he led the team in pretty much every major offensive category last year, while also managing to steal 30 bases and win a second consecutive Gold Glove for his ridiculously good play in center field. I do think he'll probably relinquish this spot in the next couple years when one of Colorado's prospects really begins to take the league by storm, but I still do think Doyle is a very good player and should have a very solid major league career by the time he goes the way of Blackmon and hanging up his cleats in anywhere from 10 to 15 years. Kansas City is up now with its first truly elite, no doubt Hall of Fame level talent superstar since George Brett, with MVP runner-up Bobby Witt Jr. What did he manage to do last year in his age 24 season? How about lead the league in games played, hits, and batting average, all while crushing 32 home runs, 45 doubles, 11 triples, stealing 31 bases, winning a Gold Glove, and posting one of the highest value totals we've seen from a shortstop this century, with a ridiculous total of 9.4. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. This guy played baseball last year like a prime Mike Trout, only being positioned at arguably the second most valuable defensive spot on the entire field. If that's not a face of the franchise, I don't know what is. We come now to our first pitcher in a while with the Detroit Tigers and their dominant lefty, Tarik Skubal. Despite coming into 2024 never having thrown over 149 innings, Skubal took the league by storm, leading all AL pitchers in WAR, wins, winning percentage, ERA, strikeouts, ERA+, and FIP, taking home a triple crown in the process, the first Tiger to do so since future Hall of Famer Justin Verlander in 2011. Being that the Cy Young winner is just 28 years old as of now, he should still be set up to have his best seasons in front of him, especially with another year of refinement under his belt. Keep an eye out for Riley Green here going forward, however, as the sweet-swinging lefty should continue to see his own stature rise following a 5.5 win season at just 23 years old. The Twins aren't nearly as easy as a few of these recent choices have been, as I think you could pick a guy that's been with the team for 10 years now and has had quite a few productive partial seasons in Byron Buxton, and I don't think you'd be wrong for doing so necessarily. And while I will acknowledge what the 6'2" center fielder has done for the team since he made his debut, I don't think he's who you think of when you picture the Twins. Instead, I believe this is $33.3 million a year man Carlos Correa, who really was signed to be the face of the franchise back in 2022, though this has come with mixed results. His initial season was excellent, his second season was terrible, and his third was truly electric, though with a big asterisk next to it considering he was only able to play 86 games. If Carlos manages to stay healthy for the next few years, he could enter the Hall of Fame conversation, as he's actually at 44.4 career WAR through his first 10 years in the big leagues, with some pretty impressive counting stats and advanced numbers to back it up. But that's a pretty big if, considering his injury history over the last half-decade. The White Sox may be toting the weakest pool of talent player-wise in the history of the sport to enter a season, which would leave you assuming this to be a pretty hard call, right? But to me, it really isn't, as they only really have one player on their roster right now who has a chance to post an insanely productive 2025, the guy who used to be thought of as having MVP potential. In center fielder Luis Robert Jr., Robert's coming off of easily his worst season, where he posted just a .657 OPS with 1.4 WAR through 100 games, losing pretty much everything that made him a valuable player in prior seasons, aside from some decent defense and base running. He is still just 27, however, and has some pretty elite contact peripherals under the hood, which means we could totally see him break back out to his 2023 levels this campaign. This would probably result in him being traded, however, making his spot on this list about as temporary as any we'll look at today. And finally, we round up this video with another one of the biggest slam dunks in all of the sport, with hulking 6'7" outfielder Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees. You could drone on for hours just discussing the historic nature of his numbers to start a major league career, and as such, we'll just keep the breakdown to what he managed to accomplish in 2024, which was somehow his best season, despite breaking the AL record for home runs in 2022. How could this possibly be the case? Well, not only did he lead all of the major leagues in WAR, home runs, RBI, walks, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS, and OPS+, he also managed to bat .322, a career high, while striking out only 24% of the time, a career low. Yes, he's about to turn 33 with a body that could quite possibly break down over the next few seasons, but I still think, just based on the quality of contact he makes, he should be the favorite to win the AL MVP for much of the next half-decade, especially if he's able to take some at-bats in the DH spot as he continues to age. Alright, that was the current face of the franchise for every major league team. Let me know if you think I got any wrong and who you would have chosen instead, as well as any other video ideas you'd like to see done in this vein. Now, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing and checking out any one of these recommended videos. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.